So for the past 3 months, I have been meticulously tracking every day in my life. I'm not sure why I've kept it up for this long, to be honest. I definitely didn't plan on doing it, but as I look back over the past 3 months, I have completely changed how I plan my days, and it has had unintended consequences over my life. Let's talk about it. So this idea really stemmed from a problem I was facing. It was a big problem. In between the work that I was currently doing every week, I had a massive project wedge its way in. It's a new feature-length film. It's great, it's exciting, but it's also taking a lot of my time, and it's been, well, a little bit stressful. While this film has been in the works for a couple years, we just got it funded at the end of the summer, and things quickly escalated with a deadline rapidly approaching early next year. The problem I was facing, and a problem that you've no doubt faced yourself, is how do you find the time when you don't have any time left? It already felt like I was so busy, my schedule so packed, that I needed to find a solution. And this is the solution: a calendar. What started with me simply trying to stay more organized and keep my head above water led me to track the bulk of my days and find some really surprising things about how I was spending my time. So before I started, this is what my typical week looked like. Now, if you were to judge me based on my calendar, you'd probably assume that I spent all day watching MasterChef, spooning peanut butter into my mouth.
It's on fire, you donut.
Yeah, sorry.
You don't lift up to your face.
Which, don't get me wrong, does happen, but I never really kept a very tight calendar. Before this all started, I would add meetings, phone calls, and shoots that I needed to keep track of, but I never went into that much detail. All my independent work and personal happenings would be organized in an app called To Do, which has its limitations when it comes to scheduling events and organizing my day. But all that changed at the beginning of this experiment when I started packing my calendar with tasks, projects, editing assignments, meetings, my workouts, and vacations. So while this is what my calendar looked like before I started, this is what it looked like after. I wasn't doing any more stuff than normal, but I was tracking nearly everything, and that eventually led me to change how I was planning my days. Now, of course, I didn't track my day down to the very minute every single day. I wasn't that tight with it, but I did keep a pretty good schedule throughout this entire process. From the moment I woke up to the time that I went to bed, I wasn't tracking brushing my teeth, drinking coffee, and clipping my toenails. That would be super creepy, but I often tracked it down to the 30-minute mark. I kept my laptop close by at all times with the tab opened up to my calendar. I had already created a shortcut on my bookmark bar, so it was easy for me to get to at all times. This helped me to remember to keep it updated throughout the day as my plans changed, and they always changed. While having a calendar open at all times helped, the real reason I was able to build this habit for so long was because my problem was so big that I desperately needed a solution. The only other option I had was to fail to meet my deadlines, and I wasn't going to let that happen. Also, if you can't tell, I'm pretty type A, so anything that can add a little bit of type A-ness to my day, I'm on it. I just said anus, didn't I? So I kept track of everything on my Google Calendar. I downloaded the iOS app to keep everything in the same ecosystem across all my devices. Based on some advice I got from YouTuber Thomas Frank, I created a few different calendars that represent different aspects of my life. Each had their own color, so I could easily see where my time was going. I made a calendar for personal. This could be lunch with a friend, going to the gym, grocery shopping, etc. Then one for work. All my meetings, phone calls, shoots, editing, and writing would fall under this category. And finally, one for travel. Now, I don't commute very far to work. But this calendar helped me plan ahead for hour-long drives around LA, road trips out of the city, and long flights across the country. The times that I travel usually aren't productive, so I wanted to see them separate from my other calendars. That way, when I look back, I can see the actual time I was working versus personal or travel. So before I get to the main takeaways of this week's video, I want to thank my sponsor, Audible. So this year I have learned so much about self-discipline, but even as much as I have learned, there truly is and only can be one master, and that is David Goggins. He details the unreal story of his transformation in the audiobook Can't Hurt Me. The audiobook details his story from poverty, depression, and poor health into an elite Navy SEAL and ultra-endurance athlete. It's fantastic, and I highly recommend it. As a terribly slow reader myself, Audible allows me to listen to tons of audiobooks every year. I listen to them while I'm at the gym doing cardio or while I'm commuting around LA. Start listening with a 30-day Audible trial. Choose one audiobook and 2 Audible originals absolutely free. Visit audible.com/Matt D'Avella or text Matt D'Avella to 500-500. The links are in the description below. As I got started, it felt satisfying to stack my days like Tetris. I learned a lot from this process, and it solved a few problems in my life. First, as I had imagined, it helped me to prioritize and organize multiple projects at the same time. Like I said, I've got 2 pretty big projects, 2 main priorities right now, but on top of that, I've always got probably another dozen or so micro projects that I need to stay on top of, and this really helped me to stay organized and make sure I was hitting my deadlines and not falling behind with any of them. It also helped me to say no to the things that I definitely knew weren't a priority, and yes to the things that were most important to me. One thing that I started to do at the beginning of this experiment was batch my networking into one day. The word networking makes me feel a little dirty, but it's basically just time that I spend connecting with creatives, appearing as a guest on someone's podcast, or spending time with friends. So instead of spreading that out over an entire week, I would batch it all into one day. This was pretty cool because it allowed me to say yes to a lot more things than I typically do. I don't often do podcasts and interviews and really make the time to connect with other people. But now that I had everything scheduled into one day, it felt like it wasn't interrupting the rest of my work and pushing things to the side. When you have these constant interruptions, when you have a phone call and a meeting and then maybe a podcast interview and they're spread out over the course of a week, it really interrupts your flow and it can hurt your productivity overall. Eventually, as the weeks went on, I cut out this networking day simply because I was a little bit busy. I felt like to reach my deadlines, I needed that extra day every week. But this is definitely something I'm gonna bring back in the future. Next, as a business owner, I need to track and log all my expenses. Everything from meals to flights to networking events and props. I usually batch all these at the same time every couple of months, or even once or twice a year if I don't get around to it. But in order to do this properly, you need to have an explanation for the expenses. So if you have a receipt for cookies from 6 months ago, you might have a hard time remembering what the purpose was. How could you possibly write off cookies for your taxes? Well, now that I had a detailed account of every day from the past 3 months, this was crazy simple. I cannot tell you how easy this was compared to times in the past. I would simply look at my credit card statement or my receipt and then double check that date with the date in my calendar, and then I would find my alibi. I would find my, the reason why I needed an alibi. And there it was, Tuesday, October 15th, film intermittent fasting YouTube video. The cookie was a prop.
Dude! Yes!
One more take. And the last and probably most significant impact on my life going forward is that I was able to look back over the past 90 days and see where I was spending my time to really get a bird's eye view of how my days were planned. And this was a very similar experience to when I first brought all my financial accounts together, when I brought my checking, savings, my car loans, student loans, and I was able to see just how much debt I was in, about $110,000 if I recall correctly. And this experience with tracking my days and scheduling and being able to look back on it, it allows me to stay accountable and to see where I'm spending my time and how I'm organizing my days and realizing that I could actually do a whole lot better. I think the biggest thing that surprised me was the amount of variation. No 2 weeks looked the same. Between travel interrupting my months, getting sick, family visiting, I constantly felt like I was getting knocked off track to eventually get back on track, only to get knocked off track again. In terms of how I structured my days, I usually found myself writing in the morning, but that would change depending on how my projects were progressing. I might also be spending my mornings filming or editing. The one thing that I want to change going forward is something that I'm continuing to relearn, and it's creating less and less opportunities for my days to get interrupted. Whether it's my workouts, after workout showers, getting groceries, or doing laundry. While it's great that I'm able to do these things during the middle of the day as a business owner, it seriously hurts my productivity. The problem, of course, isn't showers or workouts, it's that once I get off track, it's much more difficult to find my focus again. Going forward, I'm going to try to move my workouts to the morning to leave most of my day free for work-related tasks. Now, this might seem like the simplest thing you could possibly do to keep a detailed schedule or calendar. And this is probably something that many of you do already, but if you haven't, then I definitely recommend you give it a try. While it's not necessary, I got by for the first 10 years of my career without it. It did help me find new ways and new systems for creating a more productive day. And now I know that there's gonna be a lot of people that make fun of me in the comments because I'm always talking about different ways that I was able to improve my productivity. But for me, it's not really just a straight line. I often have setbacks and I have struggles and problems, and my days are often very inefficient. I am not a productivity robot. The idea is to continually get better and always work on yourself and always try to grow. You know my motto, just keep trying to do better. That's my motto. It's my motto. I'm gonna trademark that. I really should. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.